Hello, and welcome to this podcast episode. Today we're going to focus on Straight No Chaser by Thelonious Monk. We'll discuss the form, the melody, and improvisation. Let's begin with the form of the tune. We have 12 measures, and the progression itself is a blues in F. So let's talk about that briefly. We have F7, B flat 7, and then back to the F for two more measures. So there's the first four measures of the tune. Then we land on the 4 chord, the B flat 7. For 2 bars, we'll move up to F7. We'll have a 2-5, A minor 7 to D7, all fitting within one measure. Then another 2-5, G minor 7 for the duration of one measure, and C7 for the duration of one measure. Then we're back to F7, and we can place C7 at the very end of the form, say the last measure, to bring us back to the beginning, since that's our 5 chord. So we'll talk more about this progression as we get into the improvisation part of the talk. Let's discuss the melody a bit here. We have this sequence of tones. And that sequence of tones, in some instances in this tune, it has notes tagged onto the end of it, but we find those 5 tones throughout, and it's interesting that they land on different parts of the measure or different beats within the measure. So at the very beginning, we have and 1 and 2 and, right? And then immediately we repeat, but this time we start on the and of 3. Okay, and then we're going to have a few more notes tagged on to the end of that. Okay, we have a bit of space, and then he's reestablishing this idea again and on the same place where it began. So the and of 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So that note C, let's use that as a reference point. On that last sequence of tones, we had the and of 4, we had the and of 3, okay, and then the and of 2. So let's go a little bit further. Here I'm on measure 5, so we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Okay, so we've had this exact sequence of tones before, and it started in the first measure on the and of beat 3. But here it's starting on the and of 2. So we're taking a melodic idea, or Thelonious Monk was taking a melodic idea and moving it around the measure, displacing it into different parts of kind of the grid, so to speak, of the eighth notes. So now surveying through with that C note as our reference point, we've had the and of 4, we've had the and of 1, We've had the and of 2, we've had the and of 3. And so that covers each weak beat so that covers each and of the beat within a measure. Okay, carrying on further, we repeat this and we keep going again. Okay, so far we've really kind of worked with that material and maybe a slight variations, but really kind of like I talked about at the beginning, we have this kind of thematic material here. So towards the end of the form, when we're really getting into that 5 or the 2/5, changes it up into this really chromatic line. Okay, so something very different. And then it's going to end it with the material he started with that he's been developing through this tune. So as far as learning the melody, these notes aren't too particularly challenging to find. The challenge is going to be found in when you're entering. So focus on that in your practice if you haven't done this tune already. As far as this note collection, you might consider that we have, in a sense, maybe a segment of the major blues. Type scale. Landing on this helps to outline, or does outline, the B flat 7 in the harmony. So melody and harmony are generally very closely related. So that's a good example there. And then, as we mentioned earlier, we have the chromatic scale. Which is almost entirely complete. It's just missing one tone from the full chromatic scale. So the melody can really help to inform our improvisation and the notes that we might want to pull from. So as I mentioned earlier, the major blues is a spot that you can start with on the F7, let's say. So but that can also be applied to B flat 7. Or C7. Now, when improvising, you may want to have a lot of different ways to communicate your lines and get your ideas across. Since the form is so short, if you overuse any one technique, it's going to become pretty obvious. So what else can we do? Well, we can play kind of a minor pentatonic, F minor pentatonic, and use that kind of language throughout. Or kind of on the other end of the spectrum of that, we can spell out the changes by using arpeggios or being very note specific with our choices as they relate to the chord progression. So we have the arpeggio kind of approach. Let's say that's F7 there. And B flat 7. This can also help us with the 2/5s, A minor D7, G minor, C7, and let's go back to the F7. If you feel solid with arpeggios, then working with chord scales like Mixolydian and Dorian will really serve you well. So with that, you can achieve a little more stepwise motion. And so on like that. On the A minor 7, the use of the Dorian kind of chord scale or mode is really the same note collection as the D7 Mixolydian or the D Mixolydian. And even then, you can alter the chords, substitute or superimpose other chord types or other progressions altogether. We'll talk about one more final element or note collection where you can take these scales and place a chromatic passing tone in between the flat 7 and the root. And so on like that. And you can really do that on any of the chords in this progression, including the minor chords. Like A minor 7. Well, I hope this talk helps you out for your next jam session, gig, or playing at home, having fun with the tune. Thanks for listening to this podcast. I'd like to mention that you can support this channel by becoming a member of Lessons and Talks or my website, fretprince.com, and watch the video version of these podcasts. Enjoy your practice session today, and I will talk to you in the next one.